So once we get people on our list and we know it's like a piece of value that's going to just knock their socks off, like they're not expecting it to be that good, because most of the time when you get some free resource, it's like, oh yeah, I'll just check my inbox and I'll probably never use it. If it's something that's so damn valuable and they're on, what do we do next once somebody joins our email list? Because I know there's some very important steps, but I want to hear what you have to say around this. Like what steps do we take once we get them on the email list and harness them and facilitate them to enjoy being on our email list?
Okay. So I would say there's a short-term and a long-term component to this. So let's just say, you are evaluating an online business to buy, or maybe you've recently acquired one. One of the biggest low-hanging fruit opportunities that's oftentimes there is that they don't really have much email automation set up. So I call this optimizing your sales process. So, and it's going to be different for whatever business type we're talking about here. But you can just think of that as the step-by-step process that someone takes from being a stranger to being a customer. So, for you, it might be, I'm not sure if they have to like hop on a sales call at some point before, they download the resource. Maybe they get some emails from you. I'm not sure if there's a sales call or you have a sales page where people can just sign up directly. But for example, with an e-commerce business, it's super straightforward. They land on your site, they go to the product page, they add it to cart, they start the checkout, they complete their checkout. And you can have automations in between every single one of those steps in your sales process. And so for a SaaS business, a lot of times they land on the site, they sign up for a free trial, and then there's a trial period. And a lot of times that the step in between there is you're really trying to get them to learn and how and to effectively use the software so that way they actually like it. And then when the trial's up, they don't want to lose it. And then of course you have the sign up period. So whatever it is for your business, you want to create automated follow-up in between those steps, because now that's just, you're building a machine that's going to do marketing for you. That's just going to increase your sales at every step of the sales process. But that's, once you get that set up, now that's pretty much it. But not everyone's going to convert immediately in those initial emails. And that's where the ongoing email marketing comes. And that's where you want to do a combination over time of nurturing and selling. So, and depending on what type of business it is, there's going to be more education and more nurturing for some businesses than for others. In e-com, it does tend to be, I would say that there's almost always going to be a call to action to buy a product. Whereas if you're selling a service, there's usually going to be a lot more continued nurturing and maybe being less direct with sales. And so it really just comes down to what I call it as having a conversation starter. So just having some kind of angle for the emails to show up. That way you're not just showing up being promotional without at least giving people a good experience when they get the email.
That's awesome. So people are actually getting value from the emails and there's a call to action. So it's nurturing and sales. I've got a couple of questions around this, the nurturing. Mm-hmm. And then also instilling our brand into our emails to make them feel unique and good and different than everybody else's boring emails. What are some of the things that you share with people to make your emails, to make our emails as business owners valuable, nurturing, on brand, but also have that component of like, here's a call to action?
Okay, so
there's a lot in that question, so I apologize. We might have
this is great. So because there's this basically a strategy that had existed for a long time, and I think this is the mindset people have, is that when I get someone on my list, first I've got to nurture them for a certain period of time, and during that period of time, I'm not allowed to sell. And then once I've earned their trust, whenever however we define that, now all of a sudden I'm allowed to sell, and then that's when people go really hard with sales. And what I try to tell people is you can do both at the same time. So for one, don't be afraid to sell early on. Like if you have something that's valuable and this thing is actually solving a problem for them, or it's providing some sort of value in their life, and even if that's entertainment is valuable. People think that you have to you don't have to, cure someone of a disease to solve a problem or, solve a pain point. But part of it is just how you're communicating that to them. So you first have to take a step back if you haven't ever done this and do a little research on your ideal customers. So people, you can call this buyer persona work or creating a customer avatar. There's different terminology. One resource that I highly recommend to people for this is a book called Building a Story Brand.
Love it.
Yeah. So if you go through, have you ever read that before?
No, I haven't, but
Okay.
I get the concept, and I know some other books around this as well. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, what I like about this is that what they have done so well, Donald Miller created this, is he has given this framework where if you just follow this framework, you will be implementing a whole bunch of different psychological strategies that copywriters spend years practicing to get these techniques down, and you'll be doing that without having to go through all that trial and error of learning how to be a copywriter, just because it's very well thought out, this framework, which really it just starts with telling a story that's focused on your ideal customers instead of on you and your brand. So you're always talking about them and what they care about. You're talking about their worries and their fears and their pains and the current situation they're in and the situation they'd like to be in and what the before and after looks and feels like whenever they buy your products or they work with your service. And by always focusing on them and infusing some of those messaging points in every email, it's valuable because you're talking about the stuff they care about. So it's like you're not going from this phase of where you're just trying to give everything away and all of a sudden you're just ask. It's a give and take where every email you're trying to provide at least some sort of insight or some sort of piece of entertainment, something that makes it worthwhile to open it, and then reminding them that you're available to take this thing to the next level. Meaning that like for example, you've given them this resource and you probably tell them a lot of what to do. Like you give them steps on what actions they need to take. But a lot of times with services, we give away the what, but then we sell the how. So it's like whenever it comes time to sit down and actually do this thing and actually crunch all these numbers and get into the weeds and, get into the back end of a business and really, look into the all the details of everything and make the final decision. And how are you actually going to, onboard and take over from that other owner? That's where it starts to get a little more difficult because it's not going to be the same from business to business. So having a professional to work with you to handle the how, that's a great, way to frame how, basically how you deliver your content and when it makes sense to work with you and also why it makes sense for you to constantly talk about it to them.